When I was 38, which was about 15 years ago, I nearly got fired from a job that I excelled in for over 10 years because I'd run myself into the ground. My name is David Salo. An executive coach and Sufi healing practitioner. I work with heart centered business owners, community leaders, and professionals. And I spent over 20 years in high pressure business development roles while trying to figure out how to become healthy and whole while I was doing it. And so I'm going to share with you here what I found out along the way. People saw my success. I was hitting my goals. I was traveling. I was having adventures, hiking, climbing in the mountains, bike racing, doing things like that. Just having a great time. I seemed to have it figured out, at least on the outside. That's what it looked like. But people were, what they were missing when they looked at me was the overthinking. I was overthinking pretty much everything. I was often sleepless at night. I had unexplained pain. Um, I had stuff going on in my neck, the low back, my feet, my joints hurt. I just sort of had pain all around my body. And I was also disconnected from my life in a certain way. Everything sort of felt like it was at a distance. Even though I had a full life that I loved, I burned out and I was getting sick. I didn't realize that I was getting sick, but I was. And the way that looked for me was that I was overweight, even though I was training between 10 and 15 hours a week. I was really inflamed. My sinuses were very inflamed. I couldn't breathe through my nose. My skin on my hands and my arms and legs would break out into strange rashes. I had brain fog. My digestion was a mess. I was agitated all the time. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I was being electrocuted. It just felt like I was being shocked. So I'd be jolted awake from a deep sleep in the middle of the night. And so I knew I needed to do something. And the advice then wasn't so different from what we hear and see from people now. And basically, people would say to me, "Oh, you should meditate, do breath work, journal, go see a therapist. Go talk to somebody, that sort of thing." So I did. I did all those things. I started collecting practices and therapists. I work with many coaches over the years. I work with many different therapists. Did all sorts of different modalities. I went to yoga. I got trained as a yoga teacher, studied in vinyasa, yin yoga. I practiced Ashtanga yoga. I took up Vipassana meditation. I ended up going on 26 silent retreats. I studied emotional intelligence. I did leadership training. I read all the books. I did all this stuff. I really went for it. I was really trying to sort out my health and manage my stress. I really wanted to be successful and happy. And ultimately, I wasn't really getting the result that I wanted, not especially not considering everything I was putting into it. Like the result was just not coming. And so it was just very frustrating. The individual parts weren't enough on their own, despite all the different people, very skilled people, despite all the different folks I was working with. There was really nobody I had access to that could help me integrate it all. And so I realized that was the missing piece. And I took it upon myself to do that. And I'd been at it for about 10 years when the real breakthrough for me came. And it was when I started training with an acupuncturist who's also a Sufi healer. And of all the methods that I've worked with, it's the Sufi healing is the one where my heart did, in fact, activate. And when my heart activated, all the other practices that I'd been doing, they integrated within me. And so when that happened, real healing also happened. That not only wasn't happening before, but it couldn't have happened. I'm certain of that now. And so working with her was the first time that I'd ever really felt seen and accepted, not only by her as a person and as a doctor, but also by the way that the divine was working through her. I think it was because she could read my heart. She helped me to see and hear and know my heart, but she could also read my heart in a way that just, I'd never experienced that before. And it's just incredibly profound when that happens. So along the way, she helped me to gain access to the different layers of my being, to connect with them, to be able to move and integrate and kind of navigate the different layers of my being. And I kind of have come just to think of it as human anatomy. It's just the subtle human anatomy and physiology. And through all that, I became connected to source in a way that I'd always secretly hoped was possible, but it also always felt sort of out of reach. And the way, if I had to describe it as a feeling, I would describe the feeling as unconditional love and love as a force in the world. And that was something that changed my life. So much so that I became a practitioner of the method too. I got trained in it. I realized it was just something very special and that I wanted to be able to do it. And it's strange for me to say this out loud, but it's the truth. I felt it over and over again as a client when I was working with healers who are trained in this method, but also as a healer myself. I see it happen all the time with my clients. I hear it from them as well. And a big part of the healing is that the love is an energy that we tap into. It literally moves through us. It comes down and it moves through the heart. And it's something that becomes palpable, that can be felt and experienced. And it feeds us along the way, and it feeds the people around us along the way. So even though, through the work through my offering, the work that I do with people, we're working with these higher realities, make it very practical, or I aim to make it very practical while I work at the level of the heart and the physical body and our physical reality. And so for me, the heart includes our actual physical body. It includes the nervous system. It includes our spiritual heart. It includes the subtle layers of our anatomy and physiology. You could also think about it as like our body, our mind, and our soul. We're multidimensional beings. And so I want to work at all those different layers, and it's going to also include things like our emotional reality, the astral, etheric space, our intuition, and the causal level of being. So we do all of that really so we can move forward in fullness and health, and fullness, full expression of living, of who you are and who you're made to be. And so you can essentially live out your destiny. The questions that I operate from at this stage of what we're talking about is, how do we get to the point where we can do that, where we can really live like that, like I just described? And how do we maintain our connection to source? How do we maintain our ground to our heart no matter what's going on? How do we become unshakable in this world? There's just so much happening these days. How do we become rooted and anchored and aligned in such a way that we're unflappable? And then how do we come back to center on the occasions that we do get knocked off? How do we come back into alignment? What I've found is that the integration is the part that's usually missing. That's the piece that is just really, it's sort of elusive. And so when people are journaling, it's just an observation. When I see people journaling or doing breath work or doing yoga or going to therapy, I often hear them or notice them say things that it's like clearly it's working for them in the room or while they're doing that thing. But the bigger part of it, the pieces aren't really fitting together. There's not really like an engine or an activation of all of it to where it becomes sustainable, where they're being fed and propelled forward through it. There's just often something missing. And I really think that has to do with the integration and the activation of the heart. Those are the two pieces. And that's what I focus on in my integration method. So we do just that. And I'm going to map a little bit of that out for you. I'm going to just draw a picture, pretty grassroots with this stuff. So I'm going to do it with a pen and paper. But what I want to just say up front is there's three main steps. First, we find our ground, so we become established in our ground. And then two, we're going to build, stairwells and resourcing up to the platform of our wants and needs, so we can open up then to clean and create the conditions for your wants and needs to take root. So those are kind of the three steps. So what we'll begin with here is, this is just to ground ourselves in our nervous system. This is our resilience zone. So this is our upper limit and our lower limit. So I'm just going to say upper and lower, draw arrows. And then I'm going to draw the ups and downs of life. Okay. So this is what this looks like. We have our ups and downs of life. We have our upper limit and our lower limit. And when things get pushed through the top limit, then we become very hypervigilant. We might get really activated, even agitated, things like that. And then if we get pushed into the lower limit, we may freeze, become withdrawn, leave, something like that. So that's basically our resilience zone. It's an important part of the work I do with folks. And in some situations, our zone is very narrow. In other situations, it's quite wide. And the idea is to be able to build flexibility in that, and then also to understand our own markers to know where are we getting thrown off, where are we in the cycle, and then be able to recognize that before we get pushed out in a way where we get stuck in a high zone or we get stuck in a low zone. We want to know where we are, and then there's very specific ways in which we can get ourselves sort of out of the hypervigilance or out of the stuckness, so we can regain our composure, our flexibility, and move forward with ease and with being available to our lives. So that is that portion. It's kind of a critical part of the work that I do. And then the next part has to do with mapping out the bigger realities that I was mentioning. And so what we do is we start here with the person. Okay, so this is our physical body and our heart. We have a heart, and this is the person with a body. Excuse me. And this is our physical world. That includes everything in our lives, including ground. So we have ground. I'm going to write this in, ground. And then the aim through this is, I'm going to make these little lines here, is to become rooted. Okay, so we have physical world, we have our body with a heart, and we have the ground, and then we have roots. So we're going to become rooted in here. What also happens in the physical is, we end up with stormy thoughts, we have neck pain, we have churny things, fear and problems in our stomachs and so forth. And that shows up like this. So stormy thoughts, neck pain, churny stuff in our stomach. And I'm just going to put a little dot out here to the right, and I'm going to write emotional. I'll put EB out here. So it's our emotional body. And I do that because there's this layer, you might know them as koshas, but there's these layers. The emotional layer is just outside the physical, and there's a link between our emotions and these things that go on in the physical body. They're linked here. So we'll do more of this in a minute, but before we go there, I just want to flesh our map out a bit more. And so I'm going to add a layer, and we're going to call this the subtle. So we're going to include the subtle body. And the subtle includes things like the astral, the world of imagination, world of angels, etheric space, the meridians, and our energy centers. Okay, so it's like physical world, then the subtle, and includes these things like the astral, the imagination, world of angels, etheric space, and the meridians. Other stuff too, like our intuition and so forth. It's all in there. And then I'm going to go out even another layer. We'll call this causal. And this is going to be the world of light, the divine qualities are here, and then pure potential. Okay, so now we have the subtle with the light, the qualities, and pure potential. So this is the basic map of our three layers of existence. It's a common map. Probably seen it in yoga if you've ever done any yoga study, and there's different traditions, but this is the parts that most traditions agree on. Okay, so this is not making this up. This is something that has been around a long time. And there will be some nuances here, but basically what it opens up into is something bigger. What we could call it source, or I'm just gonna write here, something bigger. So now, but I'm also gonna call it love. Okay, so we have the source, something bigger, and love. All these things open up to the big heart, as one of my teachers says. And what happens is we receive the love and we send it back, whether we know it or not. This exchange is happening. It comes down and we send it back up, and it comes through, goes through all these layers into our human body, and then we give it back up there, even when we don't know that that's what's happening, that's occurring. And so I'm just going to elaborate a little bit more on the dots. The dots that I started out with linking to physical pain, they also go on in these different layers. And so you'll see I put more dots into each one of these layers, and I just connected them so it's easier to see. But in the physical body, we have physical pain and we have disease, and it can be linked to an emotion. Often is there's an emotional quality that's attached. And then in the subtle, there are going to be things like memories, images, maybe voices. Like we might have an audio memory, something like that. We hear the narrative, something like that. And then in the causal, it's going to be things that are more like impressions or ideas, beliefs, that kind of stuff. And in this method that I'm talking about for the healing portion of all the work I do, even within my executive coaching, is that we're working at getting grounded and getting aligned to the love. So we're established there. And then as we go through the different beliefs and different injuries, or if we're dealing actually healing work, then we're working at these layers to clear the beliefs and the ideas, but also clear the images, and then clear the patterns that happen in the physical body, but also in these subtle layers, there's going to be patterns. And so we clean all of those things. And as we clean them, and what are we cleaning? We clean the patterns, we clean our emotions, we clean our beliefs, we clean the ideas. And when we clean them, what we get is freedom. So being free equals, being clean equals free, and it equals health. So when we clean these things, our patterns, our emotions, our beliefs, and our ideas, we become free. So we clean those, and then we return to freedom and health. So this is the basic map. Okay, so when we think of love and source, we can think of it as the unity, the absolute, the one. We could shorthand it all and say it's, God, essentially, if you're comfortable with that. It's really the love as a force that we're aligning with, that we're anchored in, that is doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the cleaning, but also in keeping us resourced and grounded and rooted. We're rooted and aligned in something bigger that's trustworthy, where we're being loved, just for being alive. And that ends up being a big part of the healing work that goes on. So depending on how sensitive you are, and this is a human capacity, it's definitely something that you can do. I'm confident you can do that, especially if you're watching this video and you've made it this far. You probably have some sensitivity or some interest in these sort of things, some degree of mysticism in your life. And if that's true, then the method could really work for you. Pretty sensitive, and I will also be able to have a conversation with you, because I'll be able to feel where you are and what's going on. We can talk about those different layers, and I'm confident I can help you navigate these subtle parts of your reality also. And just also say, you don't have to come from a particular religion or tradition, but you do need some openness to something bigger than ourselves. We can call it God or love or the divine or the absolute or source. And if that's part of your reality, if you're comfortable with that, then this could for sure work for you. And especially if you do have, love for God or an appreciation of the divine or mysticism or these subtle realities that are bigger than you, this will definitely help you too. So what we're working with really is how to reground in that connection with the love. And through that, we untangle the knots that show up through injury in the different parts of our being. And then the resolution comes, it shows up into our life, and we return to total health. So this really isn't just about managing stress. The bigger picture, it's like maintaining access to who we really are, to the truth of who we are, the totality of who we are, even when we're under pressure, and even when things aren't going the way we want them to. And we do manage stress along the way, but it's not just to manage stress. So in this method, we are going to be dealing with the issues and the events of our lives, and the stuff that may have happened in the past. But it's going to be a little different than maybe therapy or some other practices, because we will delve into the past at times, but we will probably not spend so much time talking about it or swimming around in what happened. It's just something that I found we don't have to do. We don't have to get lost in the story, even though we'll address the story. We want to know the gist of the story, and the story and the issues will both resolve. And along the way, our beliefs will become purified, clarified, and then physical healing can also occur. And we can step more fully into the successes of our lives, the loves of our lives, our creative process, living the life that we want. And it's all very practical. We're going to be working with the body. We're going to be working with things that restore you to your original design. That's the idea behind this. So we're working at all these levels, but it's not so out there. It's going to be very grounded and very kind of rooted in the real world. Like how do you use it while you're at the grocery store? How do you use it while you're in traffic, when you're at a board meeting, when you're meeting with a customer, or you're having a difficult conversation with a spouse or a child or a neighbor or an employee or something like that. So I've helped a lot of people through this method, and everybody's come for a different reason, but some of the outcomes, I'll just name a few of the outcomes that people have shared that they're able to gain from this. And so they've said things like, I can now have the hard conversation when it's a 3 and not a 10. My relationship doesn't take a hit, and neither do I. So that would be for you. You could have that conversation when it's a 3 and not a 10, and your relationship won't take the hit, and neither will you. So you're not carrying it around. When you're at dinner with your friends and family, your loved ones, you'll really be there. You won't be running scenarios about what happened earlier in the day or what might happen tomorrow. You won't be so stuck in your head. You'll be able to hold your ground and think clearly when the person walks into the room. Whoever that person is, we all have a person, sometimes more than one. We'll be able to deliver a clear no and stand by it. We'll be able to deliver it one time and then not have a guilt storm that follows us around afterward. So family, again, they get the real you, not the leftover part of you. And you can stop watching your life from the outside and feeling like you're just kind of on the outside looking in. People start to feel like they're in their life and with the people that they love and care about, and start building community and relationships where they feel belonging and where they want to be. Others have moved through feeling like they were an imposter at work or with their art or in their relationships. Some other people had to do with breaking free of strong negative self-talk, and many, where they came looking for it or not, ended up with a closer and deeper connection to God. It just happened. So all those things are possible. I just will leave you with another question. It's like, how do we find freedom from the things that are in our way, from feeling good and enjoying our lives? It's just a good question to ask. And I'm confident that I can help you get an answer, even if it's not a worded answer, but to get a feeling of what it's like through this method. If you made it this far and there's interest, know that that's what we're going to be working with. So if any of this landed, and if you recognize yourself somewhere in what I described, there's a couple next steps that are possible for you. The easiest one, the most simple one, and the least expensive one is called the Ground Read. It's a guided self-reflection process. It's a custom GPT. It takes about 20 to 25 minutes or so. And through a series of questions, it will read where you are across 3 layers. It'll cover your well-being, how you feel in your body, and your inner weather system. And then it will produce a personalized game plan at the end. So I'm not a doctor, and I'm not providing medical advice or diagnosis with any of this, but it is a really useful way to check in with yourself. It shows you which of the stairs are solid, which ones need attention, and you can come back to it. You can do the practices and then come back to it and see what's changed. It's $5, and there's a link below that you can click through if you want to do that. If you want to go deeper and work one-on-one with me, that's an option too. We can have a call and just make sure that there's a fit, and I welcome you to reach out directly for that. Conversation is always available, and you can email me at david@throughlineinstitute.com. So David, David, @throughlineinstitute.com. Thank you. I look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.